So, today we're going to talk about building leadership teams. I know for some of us, this isn't something we're going to have an opportunity to do for a while, but certainly we can apply the concepts to other work we are doing, and it's all coming up right now. Hi there, I'm Andrea Adams. This is the HR Hub. On this show, we talk about anything related to HR. Please subscribe to the show or podcast to keep learning from my guests. So today we have welcomed back Tish Squillaro. Tish and I had a fascinating conversation about scaling organizations. And in this one, we're going to talk about team dynamics. She makes complex topics easy. And she's done work like this for 20 years with companies like Salesforce and IBM. She describes herself as an expert in a lot of complicated things. Hi, Tish. How are you?
I'm good, and thanks for having me back. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. That last one was so great. So I, as usual, dive right in. You do team dynamics trainings. So when you're talking about a leadership team, what qualities should a leadership team possess, and why are these so crucial for organization success?
Well, leadership teams start with one person, by the way. Now, your comment about you might not be ready, I'm sure anyone with a company of even 3 people, there's someone leading, right? So I do look at it that leadership is about those at the helm with decision-making rights. And, there comes a time with early stage companies and young founders or new CEOs, they have to build out a bench to support their growth and the organization's growth. So that's the leadership team I'll reference in your question. You start thinking about what roles do you need expertise in that you're not going to be doing. And then you start to build out what the job profile looks like. And remember, you are part of that team. What's going to work to benefit your strengths? What's going to complement your areas that you're not good at? Because that's the right way to scale a leadership team. Outside of the function they're going to manage, they should fit the dynamic of the group you're building. Because there's the comment about first team. Pat Lencioni in his 5 dysfunctions reference first team. I don't know if he started that or if it's in general just the first team is the core executive team, but that team has to gel. And what I mean by gel is they have to be able to not only drive the business, but work well together. And so when I talk about building team chemistry and formulating an executive team, I'm not just talking about having the right skills around the table. I think all of us know what you need in the skill set. It's just finding the right people. But what about the dynamic of that team being able to work together? That's the stuff I work on a lot.
So sometimes finding the right skill set is hard enough, and then you try and find the right personality to fit the team. Is that making the recruitment job really difficult?
It's like gambling, because at the end of the day, we don't know what we're getting, because today's market, people can talk about exactly what we want to hear, and you don't know if that's what shows up, which I've had happen a lot. And executives also think they're very good at everything because where they came from, they were great at it, but think they're also going to be great where they're going. It's not always a one-to-one fit. So the interview process is complicated. And, when I'm looking for executives, I'm not a recruiter, so I wouldn't be sourcing, but I do become part of the hiring process. I interview, I evaluate with the core team to bring on executive leadership or anyone onto a leadership team, because I'm going to look at it very neutrally. Can you, candidate, fit with that group? Can you, candidate, bring some of that group doesn't have? I think when someone's interviewing existing in the role, a colleague to hire, they look at them fitting just the role. I don't know if they're looking at it as a team dynamic. So I try to look at it like the CEO would. Is this going to work well with the business? And I do behavioral profiles a lot as a means to helping teams know what to look for and understand what's needed. And from a candidate pool to at least know we're getting what we're supposed to be having in that role fit, because no one likes to make a bad hire, especially at that level.
So how have you seen leadership teams evolve as companies scale?
Well, one, you have to look at what gaps we have first. So as a company begins to grow, if it's a real early stage company, the CEO will probably take on either a sales-like function or a tech or operating like function. Depending on what function their skill set fits, then you start working on what we don't have. And that's how I have helped companies build out a brand new leadership team. We go by the needs of the business first. Usually it's go-to-market teams. They are going to include sales, marketing, client success, if it's a sales-driven business. If it's more of a manufacturing plant where sales is not as strong as the plant making and the things we're actually building, then we'll look at the engineers and the technical aspect first. But that would be my beginning around the table. We all know we need finance. We all must have HR, even though sometimes that function is left to the very, very, very end. It should be one of the first things we hire, but we know we need some shared functions across the board. So finance and HR, and depending on your business, if you have legal, those should always be part of the grouping. Now, they're not always as seasoned or senior as we need as we grow, but we definitely need someone who focuses on that.
So what tools do you use to build strong teams, and how do you use them?
My one go-to that I've been using since I started my business in 2000 is the DISC behavioral profile. Now, you could be married to any behavioral profile. There is the Strength Finders, there's Predictive Index, there's Myers-Briggs.
Yeah.
I can pitch any one of them, but use something. I think you need a foundation and what I call a common language for a company to adopt as how they're going to look at behavioral tendencies and performance. And that's why I like using these, because I don't have to be the one using the tool to get it to work. I share the tool. I get them to understand and how to work with it. I use it as a dynamic for working sessions, but then they get to have that for themselves to use ongoing. I get people together to recognize, first, me as an individual. How do I play a part in my team? What role do I play? How do I impact the team by me? And a lot of times that gets forgotten, which is why I like the behavioral profiles. We always think we impact situations very well and always bring a lot of effectiveness. But there are times our styles and our behaviors don't. And for me, when working with the teams, I'm looking at where do we have those hiccups? Because as a leader builds their leadership team, they are looking at very high-powering, talented, independent-driven individuals, especially if we're looking at the core leadership team. That's a lot of A-types that are going to be around the table in their function, right? So they may not be all A-types across every function, but in their function, they are the best of the best that you've gotten. They don't always play nicely in the sandbox. I'm one of them. I know. It's about learning how to work as a team to get where we're going. And that's more about that first team doctrine is I'm here for the business when I'm in this meeting. I'm here on the function leader when I'm in my sales meetings with my sales team or my finance meetings with my finance team. But when I come into that leadership room, I am a first team mentality driven leader. I am here for the business. And I don't think people naturally know how to do that. So I do bring teams together to focus on just that. And I get them comfortable with who they are as a team. And I do that by using the behavioral profiles because it is very eye-opening to see how an individual impacts a situation and how a situation impacts a decision. And so that's what I show them with data, which is another thing that's so helpful. There is data from these profiles that I put into one big sequence, and I can show a team exactly where they're challenged as a team and how they do certain things and exactly how they're so good at this. And then they're blown away because I look like a mind reader, but I'm not. I just read the data in the profile because it's very realistic on where teams fall apart. Sometimes they're all too action-oriented. Sometimes they're all too complicating and overanalyzing. I can see that right away when I put a whole group together from taking their profile into one space. I plot it on what I call the team wheel, and I get to share my analysis with the teams when I have my working sessions.
So what if you do have too many like A-type personalities? I think, does DISC do colors reds?
So DISC does break, if you're going to work on DISC, it does break it down in 4 categories. There's the dominant Ds, the influencing Is, the steady S, and the conscientious and compliant Cs. So red, yellow, green, blue. So it is also color coded for those who like colors, which I do. And it is very eye-opening to see how certain functions attract certain behaviors. So I can also tell you where my salespeople will sit, where my finance and my legal might sit. I mean, it's very dynamic, especially for the HR executive to kind of use that or something like it to start to depict the future, because you can kind of understand it enough. And when I have too much of one thing, I usually start out with a funny icebreaker. Okay, who are we letting go? Because we have too much of one color. After everyone laughs, and then they think I'm honestly saying that, I go, no, that's not the key. We're going to look at where we don't have strength and try to figure out how we build that into our programs. And if we are adding to the team, maybe now we consciously look at behaviors that would elevate the team to the next level. So it does become like a foresight tool to think about the future, but it's never to evaluate stay or go. Like, I don't use it for right people, right seats. When we had that conversation, I'm not going to use the results of a profile for that. So it's not about eliminating or any labeling, but it is about informing. It's about looking at chemistry and putting things together. And if you're going to be in a business where you know you're going to be scaling fairly quickly, because that's the goal and the plan, then you need to have a good handle on how to do that. And it's going to start with the people. And so you're going to want to make sure you have the right way of helping your hiring managers get those right people. And
so once you've got these insights on leadership team dynamics, what does actioning that look like?
Oh, yeah, it's a great question. So it's like, it's a one day, now what? What do you do with all this information?
Yes,
right?
exactly.
And this is where the HR professional really can take it sailing, is because you can build dynamic business skill development around how to use this data to better have teamwork, to better have decision-making, to better do management of time and planning and goal setting. Every one of the things that fall under a performance review, or any one of the things that come in line with what a manager has to do day to day, can be driven back to that. So I have built sessions to do with teams on every one of those topics, from how to have courageous conversations by style, because you can't deliver one message to everybody the same way, how to set your time and time management. Not every style is going to manage their time the same way, so let's not force them to do it one way. Let's uniquely figure out how each style manages time. Goal setting, the same thing. We now cater to the different dynamics of the team when you're doing coaching, training, of any sort of use of how to be, in the management training programs, anything that gets you to be better at communicating. You now have a way to do it that's defined to that person's style. That's the way they listen. That's the way they'll probably adopt it. And so from that lens, I just put together programs that give it life. I usually wrap it around business situations. I ask all my clients to bring what business challenges we have. And I build a whole sales side to this, which is called Know Your Buyer. So I do sales teams, kickoffs in particular, where I help them identify their buyers. So if you know your buyer's style, then you're going to sell to them differently than your buyer's style if it's different. So it becomes very focused on how do you sell. But no matter what, at the end of the day, what it gives you is a roadmap on an individual. So as an HR professional, you have a roadmap on how to help someone and be a resource to them. And the individual, has a roadmap on how to actually manage their day-to-day, their decision-making. And it's all with data. And we went back last time we talked about HRS systems and scaling. It's that kind of data. If we categorize it correctly, you can actually be proactive in helping the business make decisions about a lot of people things because you have data on them.
So, audience out there, we've been talking about team building and how to use personality profiles to help team building. Have you used these and with any degree of success? Tell us about that in the comments. So, Tish, do you ever talk about conflict on teams and when is conflict good and when is it bad?
Well, without conflict, you don't have innovation. So I want to make sure people use their voices. And we just have to define what conflict is.
Okay.
Conflict isn't negative. And I think conflict in itself has a negative connotation that people are fighting. And that's not what conflict is. It's more like conflicting interests in how something should be done. It's not exact. So yes, by the way, these profiles help with also identifying how people handle themselves when under stress, when they're going to have a challenge with someone or something. And in a team session, I actually have people outwardly speak to each other how they handle conflict through the lens of their style. And it's very eye-opening because I give people the opportunity to say, I don't see that. Oh, I didn't realize that's what you were doing when you did that. So it helps people have a perception of themselves. Step one, because you think you're doing something and you're not. And two, it lets people learn that when I'm not hearing back from someone, they're avoiding me because they don't want to have the conversation. They're just not ignoring me. There's something bigger here, right? So it does help not creating drama, which is what a lot of people think conflict brings.
Yeah.
There is a lot of drama when you work with people. It's part of our human nature to be able to use our emotions that sometimes create drama, but there's ways to manage it. And I think this program that I do and these profiles that people can use does help identify where you'll have that. And, as I said earlier, conflict is healthy, but keep it healthy because if you don't pay attention to it, it becomes toxic.
How can HR assess and address gaps in a leadership team? Like, let's say you do have a team that's a whole bunch of D's, Reds, and how can HR help with that?
Well, first, I hope HR is on that team because that would be step one. I do think sometimes there are challenges where they're not, but let's just say they're on the team.
Okay.
I would say they are the neutral party that should use their voice comfortably and confidently and professionally about where the gaps are. Raise it. Because they're the lens, in my opinion, they play my seat when I sit with a company. I'm the neutral party that has no function I'm managing but the business. That's my function. And so if I see things not getting done, one would be we're not making decisions. Nobody's taking ownership. No one's making a decision. Two, no one holds each other accountable in the meeting. Things are not getting done by folks. You hear it because they come to you complaining, but no one does anything in the meeting about it. Three, we don't have a clear vision that you can go back and communicate to all the employees why they should work here. That comes from that room. So there's probably a checklist of things that function has that they can just rattle off and try to get among the team answers. And if you can't, there's your gaps. There's your gaps. Now, the one caveat is if you are among that team, you probably bring in people like me because that is very hard to do when you're one of them. If you're not on that team, act as me. Come in and say you want to audit the meeting and be helpful in understanding where the gaps are coming from, because the odds are you might hear a lot of it from the rest of the organization.
So true. Can you share an example of where these strategies and this work led to a notable improvement in team chemistry?
How many would you like? Because one would be too hard. I have to think about it. Every time I'm in one of these, and it has nothing to do with me, so it's not my work. It's not how fabulous I am. It's the people.
But you're surely fabulous.
But I try to be. But it is the people in the room who are so open to appreciating that we have to work as a team that I'll see things like they start talking about the pink alphabet on the table almost immediately. They start thinking about how they would change their approach with someone if they haven't been working well with them, and they actually take ownership of they should fix it. And when both parties do it, it's beautiful. The leader of the group realizes how little they know about their whole team. So a lot comes out of it. I have to say, every time I do it, it's like I've done it the first time. I love watching the reaction of a team feeling so empowered to actually work together and get stuff done every time I leave. What I find is the biggest challenge is if I am not there to reinforce it, someone's got to be reinforcing it. So I do leave them terrific little tool cards on each other as a grouping, which means don't tell me you didn't know how to talk to that person. You knew. So I do leave them the tools, but like everything else, nothing changes overnight. So what I have found as the most, upsetting is when I hear later on, if I'm not working consistently with a team, that they were great the first month and then it fell apart.
Right. And I just think about change and change management. Nothing is overnight. And so it just aligns with every people concept you've ever heard of. Okay, so we're getting to the end of this conversation. What haven't we covered yet that we should cover?
Well, here's something I say to everyone that I work with. It's not what you say, but how you say it. And I do think the world would be in a more effective and maybe cohesive place if we thought before we spoke. I don't know if we all do that. So I would say the one area that we might not have approached and where HR can really be effective is work with people consistently around the right choices of communication vehicles, meaning Slack, email. I always believe pick up the phone. Look, if you have something important to say, I don't know if people are aware today of the different ways in which all of our easy-to-use tools at our fingertips aren't always the right answer. And so, yeah, I would say that communication and how we communicate has such a major impact on everything. I don't know if we do enough development around getting people to know why you shouldn't put a Slack rant about something in a group of 20 people when you really meant to talk to one person, right? So there's just some easy fixes that I think HR can really own that, and their organization will benefit from it if we could just focus on the different ways of communicating and the vehicles that are out there and some protocols around which ones are appropriate and which ones aren't for certain things. That I think would be important.
So if someone wants to improve their skills in team development, what team development, team chemistry, team building, whatever you call it, what would you suggest?
Well, there's the selfish one. You can always call me, and I'd happy to talk to you about it. You can find me on my website. But if you're a self-starter, you want to build that skill set for yourself. If you've never done a behavioral profile, I would take one. Pick the one of your choice. I love DISC, so if you did use DISC and you wanted to call me for an overview, I'm happy to help you how to read it, interpret it. It's very simple, but I would do one of those if you've never done one. Because the quicker you see the value in the information it gives you, you'll have a tool to work with, which provides data. And I think that would be important. The second is sit and audit team meetings, if you don't already, to watch how teams work together. Because you'll only know it when you see it. And you'll see where there's gaps. You'll see if someone owns the whole room and no one else talks. I think you would want to audit some meetings to see how the company is actually hosting meetings. Are they effective? Do we have a meeting to have a meeting? I mean, are we really using our time wisely? So those would be two things. Take a behavioral profile yourself and audit your meetings and see how the team chemistry is in those meetings.
Interesting. I'm going to take a different approach to the next meeting I go to.
You'll be watching.
I will.
Be careful for what you wish for. I use this at home. My family wants to put me in a closet.
I bet. My dad did that to me too when I was a kid. I wanted to put him in a closet. Okay. Well, thanks, Tish. That was really interesting. And as a consultant, I think I'm going to take a closer look at DISC and maybe even get DISC certified because I can see how powerful that could be. Tish and I did a different episode on scaling organizations, which I referred to, and a link to that is right here. Thanks for watching out there. We will see you next time.